story's inspired by true events. We open up with Sandra, accepting the deliveries for the day, and she's trying to figure out if she'll have enough supplies to make it through the weekend. She doesn't appreciate the delivery man's tone when he addresses her like she's incompetent, but there isn't much she can feel like she can say in a situation like this. Where does this delivery guy get off on telling her how to do her job? Why does he even really care that much? He's acting like the money that's wasted from spoiled product comes right out of his own pocket. After the rude delivery man leaves, we cut to Becky as she makes her way to work, and we quickly see Officer Daniels as he yells at someone on a payphone. When Becky gets to work, she parks pretty close to the building, and Kevin comes running up and jokes about how she should save that spot for the customers. The two of them head inside together, and we see that they work at a fast food restaurant. Sandra and the others are waiting for Kevin and Becky before going over their morning meeting, and Sandra tells them that they've got to be on their best behavior for a mystery shopper sometime today. She also mentions that someone from the night before left the walk-in door open, and they lost over $1,000 in inventory. On top of all of that, they're a person short, so she wants anyone who doesn't have a customer to clean. Oh my god, if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean. I do not miss hearing that. After that dry, inspirational speech, the group gets to work, and the Friday starts at a steady, slow pace. Marty brings cups to Becky so she can restock her station, and they talk about how Sandra thinks Becky left the walk-in door open. Becky swears that it was Kevin, but she just doesn't want to lose her job. Marty's pretty sure that Becky's okay, and she starts talking about different guys that Becky's talking to. At the same time, Sandra pops in the conversation and tries to butt in by talking about her soon-to-be fiancé. Apparently that's a level in relationships. She heard that her boyfriend asked her dad about marrying her, so she's calling him her fiancé. Marty congratulates her real quick, but she turns the attention back to Becky and her plethora of men. Sandra tries to keep sounding like her love life is spicy, but she awkwardly walks away and listens in on Becky laughing about Sandra's conversation. Sandra heads to the back to swap out the soda syrups, and she finds that the maintenance man Harold is clocking out. He tells her that he's going to come in later to get one of the new milkshakes, and the Friday rush starts soon after. Becky and Connie work the counter while Sandra and Marty stock the walk-in. Eventually, Sandra gets a call from her boyfriend Van, and he's asking if it's okay for him to go to his coworker's place before she gets off. The rest of the workers start slacking off up front, and Sandra has a nice talk with them when she comes back. Suddenly, Marty tells Sandra that a cop is calling her from the back phone. Sandra's that boss that you'd hate working for, but you can't really blame her too much. She's just taking her job seriously. But it's fast food for crying out loud. Fast food managers are like the elementary school teachers of the food industry. They really try to keep things going and inspire, but they end up babysitting and spoon-feeding most of their days. Sandra heads back to answer the phone, and Officer Daniels tells her that he has a victim present that says Becky stole money from her purse. He has units on their way as a part of a bigger investigation they're doing on Becky, but he's sure that he can count on Sandra to do her part to help. After hearing that, Sandra has Marty take over Becky's station, and she takes her to the back. Once they're in the back, Becky swears that she didn't do anything, but Daniels assures her that she has a witness to her doing it. After getting nowhere with Becky, he asks to talk to Sandra, who he asks to search Becky's pockets. First of all, no one sees it as a red flag that the police are calling and warning a potential suspect that they think they did something. They don't do that. Just wait for the units to show up and take her by surprise. And the only time they would drag a civilian like Sandra into the case is if it was a matter of life and death on a timer. A couple bucks from a purse isn't that. Daniels tells her that if she finds a phone, she needs to take it, and Sandra does just that. Next, they head to the employees' cubicles to check Becky's purse, and Sandra warns her that if something's happened, she's going to have to fire her on the spot. When they get back to the office, Sandra tells Daniels that she didn't find anything, and he tells her that she's just going to have to hold her in the office and keep helping him over the phone. Sandra hesitates for a moment, and she tells him that Becky hasn't really been an issue before. Daniels doesn't buy it though, and he tells her that if it turns out that Becky's innocent, he's the one that's going to take the hit, not her. He just butters her biscuits. He hit her where he knew that she would soak it all in. Responsibility, duty, almost heroic. Poor Sandra. When Sandra puts Becky back on the phone, she tries to tell him that she honestly doesn't know what he's talking about. He tells her that they have to find the money now, and Becky promises to do whatever she has to do to clear her name of this charge. When Sandra gets back on the phone, Daniels gives her two options. Either Becky goes to jail, or Sandra strip searches her right there in the office. Sandra immediately tells him that she's not comfortable with that, but she gives the options to Becky so she can decide. Becky can't believe that those are her only two options, but she agrees to let Sandra strip search her. Becky requests to have Marty come in there to supervise, and Daniels eventually agrees. Daniels here literally sounds like a broken record. While Sandra goes to get Marty, Daniels just keeps telling her that this is the easiest route. That's doubtful. I'm really curious to find out where Daniels is. Is he still at the phone booth we saw him at earlier? Is he looking through a window somewhere? While Daniels talks to Becky, he mentions her older brother who's in trouble with the law, and Sandra gives Marty an idea of what they're dealing with. When Sandra and Marty get back in, Daniels tells Sandra that she's almost like a real cop, and they get started with the strip. As Becky takes off each layer, Sandra inspects them, and she tells Daniels that her clothes are clean. He tells her to go ahead and take off all of Becky's undergarments so she can do a thorough check, and Becky does just that. At least Marty had the decency to give her an apron to wear. Daniels just keeps on going though. He makes Becky spin around, and he tells Sandra that she has to put the clothes in her car so they can check them. At least Marty has enough common sense to say something doesn't add up here. She's not in a position of power, but she's at least questioning the right things. When Sandra questions him some more, Daniels tells her that the bigger investigation is taking place at Becky's house because they think that Becky's working with her delinquent brother. Daniels tells her that they're making it so Becky takes a plea deal to another case. Sandra takes the clothes out to her car, and when she comes back inside, she handles Kevin and the rest of the crew before going back to the office. When Sandra gets back to the office, she sends Marty back up front, and she tells Daniels that she's done what he asked. When she tells Daniels that she has to go back up front, he tells her that she needs to get a male to watch over her, and she goes to get Kevin. Why would you get her friend to watch over her naked? If she's at risk of fleeing, the last person you would want watching her is someone that would potentially aid her. This is poor planning. Where's, Julio? For a second, we see that Daniels is sitting in a house while Sandra goes to get Kevin. When Kevin gets taken to the back, he hops on the phone with Daniels, and Daniels gives him the rundown of the charges. Kevin tries to defend Becky, but Daniels doesn't have time to debate things with him. Daniels tells Kevin that he needs to inspect her now that he's in there, and Kevin can't believe what he's hearing. Kevin tells Becky what Daniels said, and Kevin tries to leave the office. He runs into Sandra, and Kevin tells her that he wants nothing to do with this process. Sandra hops on the phone, and Daniels tries to tell her that Kevin's unprofessional and not the right fit to watch Becky. This is a fast food restaurant. No offense to all the fast food workers out there, but Kevin's a prime example of the kind of person you don't want to give this sort of responsibility to. It's not like Daniels called another police station to watch a criminal. He asked Kevin to watch a naked Becky. You can only expect so much here. Daniels butters Sandra up some more, and he finds out that she's to be engaged. Daniels asks her to call Van to come help, and Van pops over to help. Daniels is at home making himself a sandwich. I feel like he's doing this just for the kicks to see how far he can go with it. He's just bored. When Van gets there, he's already had a few drinks in him, but Sandra gives him a rundown before putting him on the phone with Daniels. Sandra leaves to get everyone drinks, and Daniels asks Van some basic questions. Daniels tries to find out how much Sandra actually told Van, and he tells Van that he needs to inspect Becky himself. Daniels tells Van to take Becky's apron off, but he's not too sure about all of this. Sandra's the only one that's buying any of this at all. She's really going for that Employee of the Month award when this is all over with. She's really leaving her tipsy fiancé to be with this naked 19-year-old girl, and to top it off, Daniels is telling Van to make her do it. This is crazy. And remember, this is based on a true story. After Sandra leaves, Van lets Daniels talk to Becky again, and he really tries to convince her that she has to do whatever Van says. Eventually, Becky breaks, and she agrees to take off the apron for Van to inspect her. She hands the phone back to Van, and she takes off the apron. This is the biggest sign that Daniels is some sort of freak. He asks how big parts of her body are, and he tries to play it up as though they can be used as identifying marks. Did the witness see her chest? Is there other evidence to cross-reference this? No! Next is the cavity search. Meanwhile, Daniels is just sitting at his desk at home and he's taking notes. What are the notes for? He even has her do jumping jacks to try and get the stolen money to fall out. That's not how it works at all. While Becky does jumping jacks, Sandra handles the rush with the other customers, and it turns out that Kevin is texting around to see what's going on with Becky's brother. One of his friends actually tells him that her brother isn't even in town. When Sandra goes back to the office, she interrupts them while Van is conducting his search, but they cover up before Sandra sees them do it. Sandra asks what's going on, but when Van can't tell her anything, she decides to talk to Daniels on her own. Daniels smooth talks her, and when Becky tries to tell Sandra that she can't do this anymore, Sandra rushes right by her. Once Van is alone with Becky again, Daniels gets a notification that he's only got 1 minute left on his phone card. He rushes upstairs to get another card, and he puts the code in just before his time runs out. I do not miss phone cards. Prepaid phones are not the way to go, unless you're committing a crime, obviously. Otherwise, why would a cop use a prepaid phone to conduct official business? By the way, there comes a time when you should question authority. Daniels wants Van to spank Becky for talking to Sandra the way she did. A police officer couldn't even do that if he was present. This is where you say no. Not only does Daniels tell Becky that Van's about to spank her, he tells her that she has to do something nice for him in return. No, at first, Becky's hesitant, but she eventually agrees to follow through. Van doesn't even seem too happy about it at the same time. Meanwhile, business goes on as usual during the Friday night rush, and Marty asks Sandra if she wants her to go back there to watch Becky when things slow down. Sandra says she'll think about it. They might want to hurry because Daniels has convinced Becky to please Van. Once she finishes, Sandra comes back with food for them, but she doesn't like how quiet everyone is. Van is done. I don't think Van will ever come back to that restaurant, ever look Becky in the eye again. And I'd be surprised if he follows through with proposing to Sandra. I know I wouldn't. Sandra hops on the phone with Daniels, and he tells her that they've exhausted Van and has her send him home. As Van leaves, Harold shows up for dessert, and Sandra's happy to see him. She takes him to the back. When Van gets in the car, he calls his friend to see if he can come over, and he tells him that he did a bad thing. Van definitely feels guilty for being part of this, but there's a line somewhere in all of this. It might seem clear watching this, but in the heat of things, who would have told Daniels no at the beginning? In the office, Becky realizes that everything she's gone through has been recorded, and Sandra comes in with Harold now. Sandra hands the phone to Harold, and Daniels tries to get him to do the exact same stuff that Van did. Harold isn't having it though. He marches right up to Sandra and tells her he's not going to do it. Finally, someone has the common sense to communicate how wrong this is. This really makes Van look bad for going along with it though. I love how Harold hasn't been in the building more than 2 minutes and he's already had enough of this crap. Harold tells Sandra that the things Daniels wants him to do aren't very policeman-like. After hearing this, Sandra calls her manager, and she finds out that he hasn't actually spoken with Daniels. Sandra knows that she's been part of something wrong tonight, and she walks out of the office to call the actual police. Kevin tries to use star 69, but with it being a prepaid phone, it doesn't help him very much. When the detectives show up, they start questioning everyone, and when they ask Becky why she didn't just say no, she admits that she doesn't know why she didn't. The police escort her to the station, and at Daniel's house, he stores all of his notes and phone in his desk before greeting his daughter downstairs. Back at the station, detectives try to call around to see if certain people have noticed anyone suspicious, and they find that this isn't the first time that this has happened. So Daniels is a serial manipulator. That makes it even more concerning. He's gotten away with it in at least 2 different states. They eventually track him, and it turns out that he's a frickin' telemarketer. Go figure. Meanwhile, Becky wants to sue Sandra, but her lawyer tries to get her to sue the corporation instead. It turns out that Sandra no longer works at the restaurant, and she hasn't talked to Van since the situation. She sits down to conduct an interview, and she tries to justify her wrong actions. Throughout the interview, the reporter tries to convince Sandra that things happened in a worse manner than she remembers, but she plays it up as though Daniels took advantage of her as well. Then, the credits roll. It's mind-blowing that prank calls actually went that far at times. Just an FYI, if you aren't a cop, don't play one. And if someone asks you to do something like that, you have every right to ask for credentials and everything. As for the movie, the acting was actually really good. That surprised me. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.